That happened back at the turn of the century, back in the 1900s, 2000s.
Oh, sorry. Oh, fuck. I fell asleep. I'm sorry.
Why
we were
are you?
about
Wait,
a
wait, wait,
socialist
wait.
utopia. Vaush is comparing you to a white moderate. Wait, what? Why? Wait, really? It's too much. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. Can I not? I can't start earlier than 28 seconds on this clip. What is this site?
It's too much. And that's where.
Or maybe that's where it's actually starting, and this is just like a Chrome.
And that's where the issue is they at the same time.
Yeah, you'll notice Destiny never actually proposes solutions to any of these huge problems, because he doesn't have any. His goal here is just be a stopgap, essentially a white moderate. He is essentially doing the thing that MLK complained about in the Burma.
Why do all of these fucking losers who've never read a single letter, book, or anything relating to civil rights always bring up the white moderate? We've all read the fucking quote, my dude. This has nothing to do with that. Like, and I do have real solutions. How can you unironically say we can talk? I even specifically said to Voss, I want to talk policy. Policy is a solution. That's what I want to talk to. All you want to talk to is about all you want to talk about is your fantastic fucking revolution that no one gives a fuck about, that's never gonna fucking happen, and even if it did, you wouldn't be ready for it, and even if it did and you were ready for it, you would fucking lose. Like, how are you gonna sit here and accuse me of being the moderate, or being the guy that doesn't want to talk about real solutions, when everything about what you talk about is some idealistic fucking dumb fuck utopia that has never existed successfully on the planet Earth, has never been shown to demonstrate, has never demonstrated that it could be even successful anywhere on Earth, and is like fucking, you don't even have policy positions to get your way there. Like, Yeah, the problem is that I can't even get to the policy discussion because most of these people don't even understand the systems that they're criticizing. I don't think I talked any policy whatsoever with Stryker because he didn't even know how finance worked. He didn't have any of the basic conception of how any of the fucking things he wanted to talk about worked. So I didn't even get to talk about policy. That's your fault, not my fault. Like, fuck. Sorry, maybe Vaush did this video a long time ago and... when is this?
And that's where.
What is the date on this? Debate with Eric Stryker. Oh no, this was recent. Fuck, dude, Ian, you're so fucking stupid. I love you, but you're such a fucking moron. Like, how can you unironically say, I don't want to talk about policy when you fucking jerk off some dipshit socialist utopia constantly? That's never gonna fucking happen. We both know that, right? You and I know that in our lifetime, there will never be a socialist utopia in the United States. It's never gonna happen. Like, you talk about it literally as a hobby. Like, you might as well be debating, like, the most optimal form of government that could exist in the Star Trek universe. Like, how could you say that I don't want to talk about policy? Like, that's so fucking stupid. Holy shit. Socialists never bring policies to the table, and when they do, they're usually incredibly milquetoast or totally devoid of. And you agree with me on most of my major policy points. I don't think you're a fan of rent control anymore. If you've talked about it, or maybe you've done research on your own, you realize how brain dead the policy is, right? We both agree that maybe preferential loans could be given to co-ops. Sure, like, okay.
I've been awake all day. I've been up since 9 a.m.
Okay, new rule. You can hold me accountable to this. Anytime I talk to any more lefties about anything, I only want to talk about policies. We're never going to talk about as soon as they start going off on some dumb fuck, negative production change, get rid of the profit, any dumb shit like that, I'm just going to stop them and I'll say, hey, I don't want to talk about fantastic delusional bullshit right now. Let's talk about policies. Hold me to that anytime I have a conversation with a lefty from now on.
Of work. Problem is, I don't want to see.
Hold on, Vaush is saying I'm misrepresenting him.
It's too much. And that's where the issue is they at the same time.
Yeah, you'll notice Destiny never actually proposes solutions to any of these huge problems, because he doesn't have any. His goal here is just be a stopgap, essentially a white moderate. He is essentially doing the thing that MLK complained about in the Birmingham letter. People who oppose... It's not because he's white, by the way, because this isn't a racialized conversation. But it's fundamentally... He doesn't have, like, a solution or a timetable for change, but he's very, very interested in putting shackles on the people who are more concerned about change than he is, you know? He's a fairly wealthy... I'm pretty sure his net assets are well over $1 million. It doesn't really matter too much. He's a wealthy person who has a great deal of material and social capital, who looks at the class issues of those who push for them and says, well, okay, okay, sure, maybe, you know, I'd be in favor of worker co-ops or Medicare for all if it was you know, if it was electable and if people supported it, but they don't. So, you know,
It's too much.
And that's
Okay, go to Vaush's thing. I'm talking to him for a second. I need to calm myself down. We didn't talk policy a single time.
wait,
in
are
our
you gonna
conversation.
wait?
You
I don't want
realize
to be
that, right?
responsible for you getting
I'm
banned.
not banned. I'm muted. We didn't talk policy a single time. We didn't
Okay.
go any over the different types of universal healthcare proposals. We didn't address anything related to the Green New Deal.
Wait, but
We
I'm
haven't talked
happy.
anything related to.
I'm
yeah,
happy
sure.
to talk about those things. If you had brought
Well,
the
wait, wait, wait.
conversation in that direction, then I would have been happy to.
No, I didn't bring the conversation in that direction because you wanted to talk theoretical socialist utopia.
No,
Do you
wait,
think that
wait, please. I literally never did that. I have never
Then why did we talk
on
about
stream.
it?
I've never on stream. This is why I feel as though your ability to talk about this is compromised. I was
Okay,
in
wait,
person with
can
you.
give
I
me an
never
example?
talked about a theoretical socialist
listen,
utopia.
I talk about policy all the time. Why would you say I have no proposed solutions to anything?
I said
What are your
specifically to the big issues we were talking about prior to
Which
the clip
big
that you
issues?
saw. Global warming was the main one. Also, the manufacturing consent issue. I don't think those are things
Okay,
you can.
So the manufacturing consent issue is debatable. Okay, I don't remember you proposing a solution to that. And then also, you're telling me because I don't have solutions to climate change that I don't want to talk about what you could do. What is your proposed solution to climate change, Vaush?
Well, I've talked about it with you. I think that implementing
it?
worker co-ops would be a huge.
You
step
have zero
towards-
evidence that any of that would work in any way,
Well,
size, shape, or form.
wait,
I'm
hold
giving
on. Wait.
no,
Why are you
hold on, 'cause
shouting
brought it
over
up.
me?
I'm not okay.
Okay.
I'm giving you contrary evidence that unions stand in the way of a lot of environmentally friendly things.
I acknowledge that.
And I've demonstrated that just by having a co-op, even on a logical deductive level, doesn't mean that you would be opposed to things that might hurt the environment.
Yes,
It doesn't make
but
sense.
however, large, broad-spanning policies that overall serve to the disinterest of the working class, to the benefit of the ruling class, would be broken apart by a dissolution of the class divide between bourgeois
You're not
and
talking
proletariat.
about policy anymore. You're
Wait,
talking
wait,
about
yeah.
theoretical utopia.
Wait. Nothing I just said is utopia. I'm not a utopian by any
Breaking
sense.
apart
For
the
two-
class policies to unite the working
Wait,
class, the
wait,
proletariat.
Wait,
with the bourgeoisie. What do you mean?
This is not utopian. This is just political theory. Yeah,
Okay,
not
let's
all
talk
things
policy
can
then.
be
What
solved.
policies are you talking about?
Well, I said worker co-ops. But you can't.
The
you
worker co-ops
you
is
do.
how you're going to solve global warming.
You do.
That's your
No,
policy.
No, that's certainly a part of it, though. You do realize, though, that sometimes you have to justify policy through political theory, right? Political theory is the bedrock of proposing solutions to the way the system works today. Without political theory, we are lost when it comes to.
Where did we? But I don't need you to proselytize.
Is it
or
really
whatever.
proselytizing? Like more than
I
7 seconds?
I don't need the speeches. Like you can do that on your stream.
It's
what
wait.
did we
It's not a
say about
speech.
co-ops?
It's important.
What did we say about co-ops? It's not important. It's not relevant at all to this conversation. Obviously, I know that a broad political theory is going to be necessary to enact or to have a framework within which you want to enact any particular policy. That's common sense, brain dead shit, of course. So, what did we talk about regarding co-ops? What did I say? Do you remember?
I don't think we got to talk about it very much.
I literally told you I'm okay. I've said this several times to you.
You're okay
I'm
with it,
fine
yeah.
with banks. No, more than that. I said I'm fine with banks giving highly preferential loans to co-ops to see if getting them off the ground is a way to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Yeah, and I
remember me
think
saying
we
several
talked about
times?
how opening up the ability for states to do individual trial runs for like a broader range of policies would be a good way.
We
yeah,
did.
That was a policy discussion that we had. I thought it was pretty fruitful.
It was barely policy, but sure. But then why would you say that I'm not proposing any solutions to any of these things if you and me are literally both in agreement on the policy level here?
Oh, that's one policy. I was
What
talking
other
about
policies do you have?
Well,
for
I
climate
said,
change?
well, the specific comment I made was with regards to global climate change and with regards to manufacturing consent. Those were the two main things I said.
Okay,
He doesn't have
let's talk-
solutions
Okay,
to
so
these.
I have really big proposals regarding climate change. Most of them you oppose. So I'm curious, what are your big ways to deal with climate change besides everybody becomes a co-op, which is meaningless?
Well, I don't know how it's meaningless exactly. It's part of a
meaningless
broad
because you're not going to make every business a co-op anytime soon. There's no path forward to that, and you can't even begin to propose legislation to get you there. So this is not a real suggestion.
Well, wait. So you think that suggestions are only legitimate if they're posed within the grounds of electability? Like only if you could get them passed through current Congress? If that's the case, then pretty much nothing's going to be viable. With McConnell and the Senate the way it is,
Okay, so then can I just hear you say that every idea that you have is completely and totally electorally unviable?
Right now, almost everything that had to be passed through Congress would be completely electorally unviable. Does that mean we
Okay,
shouldn't
so
have
then you're not
conversations?
talking policy. Then you don't have like a policy.
Wait.
proposal or
So do you genuinely believe there's no point in talking about any political changes that couldn't take place in our current McConnell-run Senate? You
No, we
realize
can
you're
absolutely talk about those
limiting
things, but you
viable
can't sit
discourse
here-
to the
you
most
can't- no.
useless, restrictive congressional system we've had in the history of this country. We have to be able to work outside of these grounds because right now there's nothing that can be done within them.
If you want to pass legislation through Congress and you want to actually fix problems that are impacting people today that don't impact either of us because we both make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of YouTube, we're in the same boat now doing
Why
that.
are you accusing
okay?
me of not
If
being
you
considerate
want-
to the needs of the proletariat?
You brought up how much money I made, and for some reason you thought my net worth was relevant to the
Why do you
argument
keep bringing up
so you were-
white college kids if you don't think identity characteristics are relevant to people's opinions?
Because overwhelmingly, the type of people that talk about meaningless cultural
I would love
issues
to see
on
data
Twitter
on
are
that.
white college. What?
I would love to see data on that because, in my experience, many of the revolutionary vanguard movements inside of this country have been people of color based. And usually quite poor as well. The Black Panther Party wanted to burn it all down quite a fucking bit more than Bernie supporters did. And they were not the whitest college aged-ist group, you know?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes and I can try to find it for you. There was a big article about how there's a massive overrepresentation of white men on Twitter that are college educated that support Bernie Sanders.
Well, that's not
I can-
quite the same. I would agree with that. I mean, wouldn't white men be
That was
disproportionately
literally the
represented on
argument
Twitter?
that I just gave you. That people on Twitter are massively white, college educated, and privileged when they come on and they argue and they champion the fuck out of Bernie
Okay,
Sanders.
so you're against accelerationist rhetoric when it comes to burning the
Wait,
system
why
down,
are we
right?
pivoting away from the?
I'm not.
from
Wait,
the
I'm
policy
asking.
things?
Wait. No, this is very relevant. I promise you.
Wait,
You're
no,
against
wait.
it.
I wanted to
generally.
talk about policy. We're going back to utopia. Let's talk about policy in terms of climate change.
What utopian argument did I just make?
You're telling me that you just want to talk about solutions that are completely and totally politically unviable.
Right now,
How is
almost
that- how
any
is that a meaningful-
solution. Right now, almost any
No, it's
solution
not.
is politically
How
unviable.
about bringing back multilateral trade agreements to the table? These are the one.
McConnell
the biggest
McConnell would sit in on the table. He wouldn't have a vote on it.
So Republicans are opposed to things like NAFTA and the TPP and everything now? That Republicans would be completely not okay with any type
Just
of like
this is yes
large-scale
or
trade
no.
agreement?
Do you think there's value in discussing things that you don't believe McConnell would be willing to have a vote held on?
I think that you can get votes on stuff like trade policy.
Maybe a few things. Yeah, he doesn't shelf every bill, but most stuff, hundreds of bills been sitting on his desk. Most stuff is not currently viable. However, I do think a really big part of political discourse is not just the literal physical legislation that you put through, but the broader ideological pushes you make to legitimize certain types of bills. That's how we got.
There are levels of discourse that we can have, though. We can have a conversation about, well, what's possible under a McConnell Senate? Not very much. We could have a conversation about, well, what's more possible if we flip the Senate? That's a conversation that we can have. Those are the conversations I'm interested in. The conversation of, well, what if we eradicate the class structure and make every single business co-op? Not interested in that. It's fantastical, delusional bullshit. That's not gonna
Wait.
happen.
Why do you insist on making these ridiculous arguments? I've never said that everything that I propose has to be done in the context of a worker socialist society. And what's
Then why
more,
do you-
it's
why
not
are you suggesting
utopian.
I have no proposals just because McConnell won't pass things in the Senate.
Because I was specifically talking about global climate change and
But I've
manufacturing.
talked about global climate change. What are your policy positions on global climate change?
I don't think right
Besides
now there
everybody
are
who
any
work co-op.
policy positions that are viable within our current government that could do anything to prevent the catastrophe to come. I
Even
think
if we
it's too
flip the
late.
Senate?
Even if we flip the Senate, I don't, because anything
so
severe
then-
enough to actually make positive change would do a ridiculous decrease in the productivity
Okay,
of
so
our
you
industry.
have no policy suggestions. Why would you accuse me of that?
Well,
when
that's
you're literally the one here saying you
because
don't
that's
have
the
any policy
difference.
suggestions.
I don't think solutions need to only be policy based. I think that broader ideological movements can also be a great way of changing the way countries
Which broader
function.
ideological movement is going to help us with climate change?
Well, a populist socialist movement would probably lead towards a great deal of class antagonism that might manifest in some way in the ability to electorally restrict some of these businesses. That happened back at the turn of the century, back in the 1900s, 2000s.
Oh, sorry. Oh, fuck. I fell asleep. I'm sorry.
Why
we were
are
talking
you-
about
wait,
a
wait, wait,
socialist
wait.
utopia?
What? No, I was talking about something that's happened time and time again in this country before, which is just socialist sentiment increasing a populist uprising against robber barons. Why are you acting in such bad faith? This is legitimately
You're
disappointing.
literally telling me because you
this
have a
has happened
dumbass clip out here
before.
saying no. Because you're literally saying you're doing this weird fucking thing where you're reaching to this MLK quote to try to compare me to a white moderate and then saying, well, it's not racialized. You're trying to bring up the level of wealth I have like it's influencing my arguments.
wait, but you
and then
bring
you're
up
trying
the
to make
white-
this argument and then I'm not bringing that up to you. I don't. I bring it up in general when I talk about there's a big problem with the
Oh, well,
overrepresentation.
I didn't bring it up directly to you either. I brought it up when you were
literally
here.
directly brought up my net worth.
You brought up the race of the people that you have ideological predispositions against on
you
Twitter.
understand that when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not bringing this up, but when you're having a conversation with me, you are bringing this up. I don't throw the white whatever bullshit liberal at you. You are throwing my net worth at me.
Wait, no, I didn't. I just said it on stream. You said the white thing on stream. Directly to you.
I did not say that Vaush is just another white liberal whatever bullshit. You did say you brought up my net worth in some way to
Is it just a personal thing then? Okay, so wait. I don't think it's a matter of being demeaned. I think it's just a fact that people's material circumstances influence how they tend to behave, whether that be race or wealth.
We're in the same class then, dog. So what does that say about your utopia or your ideas about your class struggle or whatever?
Well, it would mean that if I did end up making a tremendous amount of money, or more than I do currently, I would be a class traitor, certainly. But I'm not saying individuals can only act in accordance with behavior prescribed by their, condition.
This is such a Weasley argument.
Wait. Okay. I'm not trying to be like bad faith or antagonistic. As I see it, we both believe, generally speaking, that people's behavior can be influenced by their conditional circumstances.
This is so Weasley right now. Holy shit.
I don't understand. I genuinely don't. Can you explain to me? I don't understand.
Tell me what you don't agree with. When you bring up out of nowhere, totally unprovoked, my net worth, your goal there is to poison the well, to make it so that everything I say is tainted with my class. Like it's somehow an argument against what I'm saying. Do you deny that that's what you're doing?
That your behavior is possibly tainted by your class. Absolutely, yeah. I think you do the same thing when you make the white class reductionist, LARPy, white boy socialist who just wants to burn it all down. I feel as though you're poisoning the well in a similar way. I just think that my well poisoning in this case is more materially defensible than yours. But if it bothers you, I won't make that argument.
Can you
again.
show me a single argument I've made that's like because of my class?
Well, it doesn't work that way. I couldn't show you an argument a person made because they're white either. People like Candace Owens exist.
So, for instance, when I argue with a socialist and they say things like Democrats stand for meaningless cultural changes instead of important class changes, that sounds to me like white straight privilege, because things like gay marriage, things like abortion, things like what's going on at the border don't impact you. Things like DACA, you don't care about these things. So that's an example of me pointing out how, hey, it feels like your position here, your privileged position here is having a negative impact on your ability to see through these arguments.
No, yeah,
when you try
I agree
to throw my net worth at me, I never make an argument. I want to keep my wealth. I've consistently come out in favor of higher taxes. I've consistently come out saying things like, I don't think free healthcare or free schooling should be given to like my kid. It doesn't make sense. I've consistently always been against the interests of my class when it comes to things like tax policy. Okay. In fact, if anything, I would be more motivated to say things like everything should be a co-op, because guess what? I don't actually run a business like that anyway. So like, if anything, I could go even further into saying that. Like,
so a few things there. For one, it's absolutely possible for people's arguments to be influenced by their privilege, but all of the privileged white boy arguments that you could find on Twitter, I've heard black people say as well. Your class position and your racial position and what have you can influence your perspectives, but it's not like a one-to-one determining factor. There's undeniably, you're absolutely a class progressive in some respects. I'm not saying that you're you go on stream and you're like, ha, because I made 300,000 last year, I will now oppose this tax bill. I'm not saying that. I do think it's something that broadly influences your politics as it influences mine. Again, I didn't think this would be a huge. Again, I won't make the argument that your class position is influenced by your wealth again in the future, but I would humbly request you stop mischaracterizing everyone online who's revolutionary as like a white boy college kid. I just don't think that's accurate historically or contemporarily. And even if it was accurate, it's not an argument.
Historically, there is no Twitter usage. The Black Panthers didn't have a Facebook group. I don't know why I don't know if you're just throwing in words to make the argument sound more
historically, as in historically, where we can see most leftist action take place in this country, because the left has been dead for the past 20 years or longer, we can see that this is not something exclusive to college-age white people.
I never said that Bernie Sanders support or that leftism or that socialism was exclusive to that. You're mischaracterizing my argument.
Then could you please recharacterize it?
Sure. I've said it multiple times in this conversation. What I've said is that the online left on Twitter are massively overrepresented when it comes to wealth, when it comes to education, when it comes to sexuality, and when it comes to race. That's the argument that I've made. But almost every single time I've said that, in even on my stream, I usually qualify it afterwards, and I say, I know that like in real life, Bernie Sanders' demographic of supporters is far different than this. But online, these are the problems that exist. Everybody acknowledges this. Even BreadTube has made threads, and other BreadTubers have talked about how overwhelmingly white, college-educated, straight, and wealthy the online YouTube commentators are. All of the big ones, Sean and Jen, H Bomber Guy, Philosophy Tube, like all of these guys are generally white, straight men. Like,
But usually for different reasons, though. Usually that conversation takes place in the context of minorities not being included in discourse, whereas in yours, you seem to just be dismissing them because they're white college-age
I
students.
literally, so I gave you an example of how you are dismissing my arguments without any reason.
Wait.
By giving me an word. When you just asked me, well, I've never seen how I could dismiss someone's argument just because they're white or how that relates to it. I gave you a specific example of a very particular statement that I've been given multiple times and how I think that a person's class can influence, or not class, but how they're like, I guess IDPOL can influence that. So you can't tell me, well, you're just saying it for no reason without giving. I gave you a very particular.
Do you not think there's a
example,
relationship between people's income and their political tendencies?
There could be.
There is, absolutely is. Didn't the wealthy vote predominantly go to Trump back in 2016? I'm pretty sure there are strong tendencies there. So maybe I'm saying, hey, maybe your wealth has made you a little less willing to consider the more theory-based, revolutionary, populist perspectives.
Okay, then I'll say maybe your wealth has made you a little bit less willing to consider the pragmatic realities that working class people face today. And maybe you should be a little bit more willing to talk about things that actually matter, like bills passing through Congress or children dying in cages on the border, rather than just...
But
okay, cool.
Why do you mischaracterize?
I'm not mischaracterizing you.
But you act as though, and you've said multiple times in this convo, that I just dream of a socialist utopia.
Because when I asked you for policy positions related to climate change, you told me that the only way to do it is to like abolish class.
No. I said that would be a way of helping, and I don't believe that within the...
Hold on, you're trying to rewrite the record live. I asked you specifically, I said, if we flipped the Senate, is there anything that Congress could do to help climate change? And you said no.
No, I said I don't think there's anything they could do anything that they could do to prevent widespread climate devastation. There are things that they could do. I'm sure some of those things would be helpful, but in terms of real substantive change, it would require them confronting their class interests, which I don't think is going to happen.
Okay, so you semantically, you said...
Why are you so interested in accusing me of using verbal trickery? I'm trying my best to answer your questions honestly.
Because you're essentially just restated what I said.
Do you have any idea? Okay, what do you think? Do you have any idea how severe a policy would have to be for it to, at this point in time, really turn back climate change? I mean, actually do something about it. Not prevent,
but I know the vehicle through which it happens, and the vehicle through which it happens is through multilateral trade policies. There is no other reasonable discourse.
I've argued that. I've said that I disagree with the destruction of the TPP and NAFTA because it was the only way for us to economically leverage our power over countries like China, who are a huge influencer in global climate change.
Wow, cool. So it sounds like we agree on the policy points. Why would you say I have no solutions?
Because it's not a solution. It's not politically viable for us to reenact the TPP and NAFTA, is it? Not with McConnell
What do
in
you
the
think
Senate.
is more likely, getting a multilateral trade agreement passed or having the entire class structure of the United States dramatically
At what
change?
threshold of likeliness is it no longer relevant to talk about political solutions?
I think that if
Find
we
the exact line for me, if you would. And why exactly do you think that you have the right to tell people?
I don't know where the exact line is, but I know that there is a massive difference between the entire class structure of the United States being reshaped versus passing multilateral trade agreements.
It's a good thing I advocate for both.
Acknowledge that. Sure, you can advocate for both if you want, but just because you have a more fantastic and grandiose fucking vision for, 150 years.
I have short-term goals and long-term goals.
But that doesn't mean you can look to people that are looking at pragmatic policy and go, oh, well, this guy doesn't care about anything. He doesn't have any solutions proposed to these grand problems.
We had a conversation in person about this just a few days ago, and I think on the subject of climate change, you acknowledged that the free market probably wasn't going to find a solution. You threw your hands up in the air.
What kind of a pivot was that? What do multilateral trade agreements have to do with the free market?
Because
why would you think that I would? Why would you think I would expect that the free market would solve climate change?
Because the TPP would be a mechanism through which the free market would allow us to leverage.
Wait, hold on. This is absolutely not true. The TPP would be a way by which we can enforce government regulation, which is anti-free market, onto other countries that enact these trade agreements with us. The whole point of the TPP is to use your economy and then your government regulation and enforce other countries to follow. It's the opposite of the free market.
Yeah, but it functions through a market system, does it not? I mean, it's only through the interaction between the multinational corporations that we're able to facilitate this kind of trade leverage.
Social security payments function through a market system. That doesn't mean that all of it is free market. That's such a disingenuous way to state that.
Then my apology. Wait. You are really interested in painting me as acting in bad faith. Let me rephrase that.
Because you are,
not
absolutely.
Not free market then. Fine.
Okay, you can say market, but there's nothing wrong with saying we need like a market-ish
I never
solution.
said
Like,
it's wrong. I said that when we were talking in person, a chatter or some donator asked about our respective beliefs on what could be done to solve climate change. You didn't seem to have a particularly strong solution. At this point, I don't think anything can really be done to stop the coming change, because even revolutionary solutions take time to implement, and they're, not particularly likely to bring about. But what does bother me is that people have been pushing we just need the multilateral trade agreements, we just need the carbon taxes, what have you. This has been going on for decades now, and not only has it really failed to substantively change anything, it's misled people into believing that pithy milquetoast policy decisions can change what is essentially a climate
but that's
apocalypse.
not true. If you've lived in places like LA, you've seen a dramatic curve of pollution over the past 20 or 30 years. This place used to look like Beijing. Like there used to be smog alerts and shit in California because you couldn't go outside because the air was so fucked in places
I
like
didn't
LA
say it
to
did
breathe.
nothing. Just compared to the climate apocalypse that it is failing to prevent, I feel as though
Well,
its changes
you know what?
are.
It's done a hell of a lot more than any socialist country sure as fuck has in terms of producing any results relating to climate change.
What
Has it gone
socialist
far enough?
countries do you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about the USSR. We can talk about China.
The
we can
U.S.
talk about
I don't
Vietnam.
think climate. Okay, I'm not defending the USSR. I don't think that climate discourse broadly was something that was that on the table when it comes to implementation back during the days of the USSR.
No, but like the hunting certain animals into extinction, having massive like
yeah. Wait,
ecological
what is
damage
this?
to different
What
systems.
now? This feels like a pivot to me because I don't particularly.
What? How is it a pivot? You're the one that just brought up.
No, I didn't. You did, and I don't care for the USSR. And also, the USSR broke up 30 years ago. Yeah, you did, friend. What I care
Okay,
about is bringing
What I
about
said- no,
positive
no.
change.
Wait. You made the claim that capitalism or whatever isn't addressing problems related to climate change. It is. Is it doing it fast enough? No, maybe it's not. But that doesn't mean that we can point to systems that have either dramatically failed in the past or have no like even ability to exist at this moment in time and say those will do a better
Why
job.
are you wait again? I advocate for policy decisions that can make improvements within the system, and I also advocate for broader populist changes that I think can make changes faster. I have never been of the opinion that we should just wait in our hands until the revolution happens and then get working. I've advocated for people to do local electioneering. I've advocated for people to push for policies like the TPP. I've advocated for all of these things. I don't understand why I just don't think they're enough. I don't think that operating within the current frame of political feasibility is anywhere near enough to address these problems and others, and that it's important to have a broader, more revolutionary perspective. And if I may, this is exactly the same issue, I know, that Martin Luther King Jr. had to deal with, because many of the political movements during his time were very interested in the minuscule policy proposals about maybe alleviating this or that aspect of the Jim Crow laws, or seeing an appropriation of wealth from here to here in very minor ways. But they rejected this, not wholesale, but said it wasn't enough, and they pushed as a populist movement for something more. And that is what I advocate for, simultaneously to work within the system, but to advocate for something better. I think this is an inarguable position.
Yeah, sure. The position sounds fine, but it's a far cry from saying that I have no solutions proposed for any of this, which is just demonstrably false.
Fine. No
Given that every
sufficient solutions. All right, a solution
Sure,
usually solves a problem.
In
You
order
work
for them to
towards a
be
solution.
sufficient, for them to be some fantastical restructuring of our entire society, that is correct. I don't have any of those solutions at this point in time because I usually don't waste my time fantasizing about
Well,
them.
a fantastical restructuring of our society was precisely what allowed us to solve many political problems back during the 18th century. I don't see why it's impossible for us to believe this could at least be on the table in the future.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you again in 25 years when we're still nowhere closer to socialism than we were 70 years ago when people thought that we were on the cusp of being there.
Wait,
so.
for one, you do realize that's not a response to what I said, and for two, you do realize
that by
I don't
saying,
believe
well,
I'm going to see a socialist revolution in my lifetime. I said this to you in person.
You do realize that you've said this a million times to me. That's saying like, well, we went from feudalism to capitalism, so therefore anything else we could move to. That's not an argument either, right? You have to actually like do the groundwork and demonstrate it succeeding. Capitalism and markets existed across many different types of feudal lands, whether it was farmers trading crops with each other, whether it was armor smiths. There were tons of these different.
There have been
little shadow
socialist
economies
governments
that
for
exist.
centuries.
No, they're not that have worked successfully on any scale.
Wait,
no,
but those capitalist societies also invariably got crushed. There were a few successful experiments. I haven't read up on all of it, but
the difference was that market economies were tenacious enough that they survived through anybody trying to crush them or through any other.
No, they
opposition,
didn't.
and
They
now it is
survived. They survived when people who wanted the principles of the Enlightenment to dictate their government policy eventually grew powerful enough that they could overthrow the benefactors of the previous system. That's how power spreads, not through ideas succeeding and spite of adversity, but through power and people who are willing to kill to preserve them. And that's what
you don't think the royalty or the bourgeois or the previous upper class wasn't willing to defend their systems as well?
They did, and
Capitalism
they
succeeded
eventually
because
lost.
It's a better form of organizing an economy.
Then feudalism. Wait. No, and because people who believed in it eventually succeeded in their beheadings and got ahead and took hold of the governments they needed to take hold of.
And socialists have tried as much in the past, and they failed over and over and over again. So it seems like it's probably not a really good way of organizing an economy that can't hold its own on the world market.
What specific policies economically do you think I propose that would be unsustainable in a future economy? Or are you just literally doing, you're literally doing the Vuvuzela argument. You're literally doing the what about Venezuela argument.
No, I'm not. Every policy position that you've given me, I'm pretty confident you've copy-pasted them from my own previous YouTube videos. So obviously I agree with all of your individual policy prescriptions.
That's a funny way of avoiding,
Firstly,
that's a funny way of
secondly,
acknowledging the fact that we agree on more than you're willing to admit.
No, you're the one that wouldn't admit that. I would never come out and say, "Oh, Vaush, he doesn't have solutions to anything." You said that about me.
Why? I don't understand why you're so fixated.
Yes. Every single policy.
No. Because policy isn't the end of politics. Political theory encompasses everything, not just policy. Policy, what's electable, what's viable, is an incredibly tiny fragment of the broader political happenings in a country. To end at policy and to not address political theory, I'm sorry if it's boring for you, and if you're not interested in it, then fine.
You keep saying that I don't want to talk about political.
You've said you don't want to talk about it.
Choir so much. Like,
wait, you've said. Wait, am I mischaracterizing you?
Like so much of what you say is just like trying to score brownie points.
Wait, am I? Dude, you're the one who you're the one who keeps accusing me of acting in bad faith.
I have never said that we should never. I literally spent how much of my time talking about.
You pretended to fall asleep earlier when I just talked about a solution I had. You talked in the stream I was looking at about how you don't like talking about political theory.
My initial contention with you is you said that I have no proposed solutions.
No sufficient proposed solutions. Yeah, sufficient. My apologies.
No proposed solutions to these problems.
Well, okay. In my mind, a solution fixes a problem. So a sufficient solution would be one that fixes.
That has nothing to do with whether or not I think you could talk about political theory or not.
Then why?
If you want to talk about political theory, that's fine.
Then why do you keep insulting people for talking about political theory?
I'm not. I'm insulting you.
I just watched your stream segment. You were saying people who talk about it are brain-dead ideologues who only care about the revolution, and you're bored of political theory, and you only care about policy, and you pretended to snore earlier when I gave you a potential solution.
What I'm saying is that if you want to talk about political theory and then lambast everybody else that wants to talk about policy by saying, well, they're not proposing enough, that is a ridiculous dichotomy.
Anybody who cares only about policy or only about political theory is, as far as I'm concerned, a demagogue who doesn't actually care about affecting change. And I've said the same damn thing. I've said the same thing about all of the fucking dipshit tankies out there who do believe everything that you mischaracterize socialists as. These class reductionist fuckheads who don't care about electoralism and only want to sit on their asses until mommy and their chicken tendies will eventually carry them through to the revolution. I think both are important. You stick mostly to policy, important, good, great. But when you say stuff like political theory is dumb, political theory is LARPy, political theory is boring, it does make me think as though you're leaving a lot of potential solutions on the table. And that does bother me.
When you're literally coming out and saying, oh, he has no proposals, because I usually ground most of my policy positions in pragmatic electoral reality, that's bullshit.
No, you have proposals, just not solutions.
Okay, well,
I mean, they address
the socialist revolt or whatever. I guess I don't.
It won't happen in my lifetime. I've said that multiple
We both
times.
know that. I know. Fucking Christ! I'm hosting Raj. Jesus fuck! I fucking hate. If you're gonna bring up a dead person as a defense for a shit idea, then the dead person kind of becomes attackable, my dude. I'm sorry.